Alright, it is time for the Brazilian Grand Prix observations. Now, the working title is Gorgeous Russell, There's a Brazilian on the Grid, and Friendly Fire. I suppose the jury is out on these sprint weekends. All the drivers are chirping this way and that way in regards to it not being traditional and it not being what they've grown up with and what have you. And I suppose now the difficulty is that Sao Paulo has produced a good sprint weekend. Sao Paulo is going to produce, at the minimum, a decent / watchable Grand Prix, regardless of whatever you so do with the format. Well, I suppose don't get too fruity with it like the NASCARs are doing currently. But generally, whatever you do with the format, it's going to produce a good spectacle. So for me, it's not really to be taken as as a standard for what to expect from sprint weekends. But oh well, this is good film for somebody. It's good film for me as well. But anyway, on to the weekend. It starts immediately with qualifying on Friday. I actually detest qualifying on Friday, by the way, but anyway, Magnussen stuck it on pole, quote unquote, and I suppose he got lucky with the timing of everything. And really, for me, George did nothing wrong. He just stepped the car a little wide. There's less practice time. I mean, it's easier to say he's just made a mistake rather than get fruity and spicy with it and say, oh, he's gone and parked the car on purpose. Because, I mean, there's no telling what the weather's going to do. You can't actually bank on something like that. But anyway, I suppose it's just worthwhile to suggest that people not make the space toxic. Don't become your enemy for no reason, really. Because George, what's the issue with George? But anyway, so on to the sprint. Sprint weekends, it's really a mess. But yeah, first takeaway is that Ocon is at war with his teammates again. I mean, it's going to be wacky races at Alpine next season, and I don't think it's going to be on account of any prior history these drivers have, right? Gasly and Ocon. I don't think it's going to be on account of that. I just think it's going to be on account of Ocon. He's a bit of a madman. This was during the sprints. Never mind what he did during the actual Grand Prix. But yeah, he was at war with Alonso once again. I don't know. Ocon, he perhaps has some guarantees in his contract that he's not going to be dropped anytime soon. Because really, this isn't a good advert to any other team, right? You're not good enough to be doing that. Believe you me, you ain't good enough to be at war with your teammate like that. Right, it would be one thing if you even had the driving ability for it and you weren't colliding with teammates here and there at Ocon for all of this. Right, you also collided with Perez, had some altercations with Ricciardo. It's all on you, man. It's all on you, Ocon. And now Alpine, they're going to have to really consider that, well, we've signed this guy long term. But oh well. Alpine have opted into what they've opted into, and I'm anticipating a very spicy season at Alpine next season. I really am. And the season after, assuming the drivers are even still together in 2024, right? Assuming they even make it that far, because Ocon, he's gonna do crazy things. I have this vibe that whatever we've seen from him versus Perez versus Alonso, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's gonna get even wilder with Ocon. Lance Stroll is displaying some loose driving standards at the back end of the season. He was really good coming out of the summer break. He kept a high level, although the context was different there because he was moving forward in the races and finding wherever the car's actual place in the Grand Prix was, as opposed to moving backwards. Alright, now he's displaying his loose driving standards versus Vettel. He's got loose driving standards in general when on the defense of Lance Stroll. Alright, he's really good going forward, going back. Some questionable moves. And he's doing some of that stuff against his teammate. He's very lucky that it's Sebastian Vettel in the other Tracing Martin right there, because quite frankly, there's more people on the grid that would have ended really poorly with than for both of them to keep on going to the end of the sprint. That could have ended really poorly. But otherwise, one minor observation from sprints is Sainz is looking a little more comfortable at the front of the field as the season has gone on. He's getting more accustomed to swinging with the big boys. For me, it remains to be seen if this is just some good form at the end of the season, or if something is actually clipped for him and it's going to be the same, and he's going to be the same spec next season. Right? Because people have said this and that about Carlos Sainz, and he was never really in championship contention this season. So, talented driver, but there's some minerals required at the top end of this game. He's showing some right now at the end of the season, despite Ferrari having fallen off for one or another reason, but he's showing some form. On lap 19 of the sprint, Verstappen, he would not yield to Sainz, and he ended up paying a price for that. Verstappen, that is. His whole weekend was pretty much colored by that event. At the back end of the sprint, Perez asked if Verstappen could be moved over. I've got a bit of a problem with with drivers asking teammates to be moved over. I do have a bit of a problem with that, although there's certain context where it's acceptable or perhaps even preferred. Alright, this is perhaps one of those where it was preferred that he move over, but it's the sprint, you're just gaining 1 point, and I believe Leclerc was going to finish behind him anyway, so it wasn't particularly important to let him through. Right, but it was interesting to me that Perez asked. That he asked. We'll get to that. We'll get to why I think it's silly to even expect Maximilian Verstappen to listen to team orders. Right, I'll get to that at the end when we address the actual Grand Prix. Right, but to me that was a silly thing for Perez. So it's not going to happen. Not because the team don't want it to happen. It's just because Maximilian Verstappen, there's an actual consciousness in the other car, and he's got his own doodling going on in his head. Who the fuck knows what type of designs he had on this weekend. Now, commentary decided to get fruity with the language. He's mad. Oh man, they decided to get fruity with the language and say George was robbed, quote unquote, at the Sakhir Grand Prix. Right? So now I have to highlight language issues, right? You can't say George was robbed because their Mercedes, they just made a procedural mistake. That was their own mistake. That was the team's mistake. Right? I have my own working theory. that Mercedes lose some amounts of operational efficiency when Sir Lewis Hamilton or Toto Wolff are not present. Although they seem to do quite alright without Toto Wolff this weekend. Though I do have that theory that they lose some amounts of operational efficiency, especially with Sir Lewis Hamilton not present. Right, for one or another reason, I perhaps have a video addressing what those are. Alright, so at Sakhir, where Mercedes got their drivers' tires mixed up, there's no robbery there. There's no robbery there. That's just the team dropping the ball. It happens. Like, that happens. You can say they were unlucky or something, but definitely not robbed. Alright, definitely not robbed. To be robbed is to have something stolen. Right, the property is gone. What is rightfully yours is now gone. That's robbed. Alright, on some level you could say, George, you should have covered whatever you should have covered whatever motivational gaps in the team emerged when Sir Lewis Hamilton wasn't present. You could arguably say that for that Sakhir Grand Prix. So no, he was not robbed. Shit happened the way it did for a reason. Right, he just wasn't ready. He just wasn't ready to win a Grand Prix. It happens. It happens. Not robbed, but get spicy with the language. It'll get the social media turning over undoubtedly. Get you some clicks. Do all that good shit. Get you commentary even here. Do your good shit. Alright, on to the real Grand Prix. I really am not a fan of sprint weekends, particularly for this. The pole sitter is not on pole for Grand Prix. But anyway, so on with Mercedes. First observation, there's a Brazilian on the grid. Alright, so Lewis Hamilton now honorary citizen of Brazil. This was on the papers ages ago. I suppose they made a ceremony of it now. But yeah, it really was like there was a Brazilian on the grid. He was getting more fanfare than I saw Felipe Massa getting. I suppose there weren't as many cameras on the crowd back then, but Jesus. Jesus. So, crowd was cheering every time this guy went by. Alright, so the first observation, a potential Sir Lewis Hamilton win was sabotaged by Verstappen. Alright, that's the first. That's the first takeaway from Mercedes weekend as far as the Grand Prix is concerned. It was probably a likely win if there's no telling how much damage the floor actually took, but I don't believe it was all that much, but anything could make a difference. Now, there's some narratives going around that perhaps Sir Lewis Hamilton, 8-time world champion, was just letting George get his first win. They were racing. Alright, make no mistake, they were racing at the end. I'll address that in a bit. They were racing in the end. Regarding this crash, right, and regarding what damage Sir Lewis Hamilton had on his car, there's the what was that? That right front wheel cap, hubcap. It's the hubcap, isn't it? Well, that right front hubcap, that came off. Right, of course it got replaced in a pit stop. It is what it is. But that came off. The car was handling a little floaty after that. Didn't really see the car handling the same type of floaty way after a pit stop. And it certainly didn't look like it going by the pace this guy was running at. Those who hold the keys to the machine, they're not going to be pleased with Maximilian Verstappen potentially. I'm not saying he did it, but he probably said it himself already. He probably said it himself already by the time this video's out. That he purposely sabotaged Sir Lewis Hamilton's Grand Prix, or attempted to with his overtake. Now, the stewards did rule against Maximilian Verstappen in that collision. That was the correct ruling. I mean, is Verstappen going to make turn 2 with that speed and angle of attack on the corner? No, he's not. he's just not. Right. George Russell, right, if he was as crazy as Maximilian, he would have tried the same move in the sprints. Right, but he didn't. He backed off. He said, nah, this one ain't it. This one ain't it. That's what he did. Right, so stewards had the film to compare. It was very obvious, well, who was wrong and who was right. And, well, it was interesting to me that Brundle had his take on it. I mean, these are his fan goggles coming out. He should have known immediately when Sir Lewis Hamilton jumped on the radio and said, that's definitely not a racing incident. I mean, you don't say that on radio if you believe like, oh, I might get in trouble for this one. You just don't say that. All right, but those older keys, they won't be pleased with this one, because in all likelihood they probably wanted to engineer a win for Sir Lewis Hamilton at the Brazilian Grand Prix. He's just become a Brazilian citizen. They've got to try balance the scale somehow after the whole fucking mess that's this 2021 and 2022 season. And, well, Maximilian barred them from doing so. So there's going to be big kickback from this now, right? And more kickback from shit that happens later on in the Grand Prix with Maximilian Verstappen. But yeah, karma's like a spring. The more energy you put in it, one way or the other, it's gonna spring back. And Maximilian, well, we'll see just how much more tension his coil can take. Now, Russell asked to go long. Alright, he was very happy with his tires, so he said go long. People might say he's giving instruction to the pit wall. I mean, really, he's just giving info, right? That's like key info. You gotta know what the tires do. The engineers, they'll never know what it feels like for F1 tires to wear out, right? They'll just never know. They'll know from simulators, and that's not real life, right? That's just not real life. So they'll never know. So the driver needs to give them this information. Good on George for doing that. And one would imagine Sir Lewis Hamilton is doing the same thing. It's just not being played, right? All the audio is curated. You know, I gotta say this again. I said it in some other observation a little while back. But all the audio, it is curated, right? Be aware of that at all times. So later on, when Sir Lewis Hamilton was told to pit so that he can stay ahead of Perez, he was insisting on the radio that his tires were good. His tires probably were good, but, well, you can achieve a free overtake, yeah, essentially. So, you know, it falls both ways, and this is really Mercedes working at peak efficiency. This is how they should be working, right? I mean, the cars come to the boil as well for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Who knows, right? Some very rich oil tycoon in Brazil might have paid to unlock a few extra horsepowers in the Merc. I ain't saying one way or the other, allegedly. Allegedly, right? All types of things can happen, but it's about time, right? On a level with you, it's about time some fucking shit like that happen in Mercedes' favor. We'll see what happens in Abu Dhabi. Alright, we'll see. Because FOM, it's crunch time now. Now you gotta balance the scale somehow. And it's gonna kick up the whole furor of Sir Lewis Hamilton is winning Grand Prix at Abu Dhabi, and all the memories and all the sound bites from the fucking presses and shit out. Anyway, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. But yeah, then there was the safety car, and yeah, that was when Russell really learned how things are gonna work at Mercedes. And Mercedes have held firm, even in post of the Grand Prix. Alright. Russell learned the back end of the Brazilian Grand Prix that there are rarely, if ever, any team orders at Mercedes. Right, you gotta earn your stripes here. You really gotta earn your stripes. The only expectation from the team is that the racing between teammates is kept clean. That's the only expectation. Otherwise, race, lads. Race. You better bring your A game. You better bring your A game. Alright, I mean, Sir Lewis Hamilton, he was in shock mode for the restart. Right, he was in shock mode for that restart. Ain't no weaving around here. Fuck all of that. Fuck all of that. He was just looking dead ahead and looking for George Russell's trigger on the throttle. That's all he was looking for. Did he get it? Did he not? George was good. George was good. I said it would be interesting to see which of the two actually got the first win of Mercedes season, or perhaps the only win. Who knows? Who knows what Abu Dhabi has in store for us? But yeah, I said it would be very interesting to see which of them got the first win. Now, of course, there's caveats around this win. Right, Maximilian Verstappen's alleged sabotage plan over here. There's caveats around it. And some people might even say George's findangling in qualifying. And there's a whole sprint Grand Prix before that, and it's at Sao Paulo. You can overtake. I don't really do weight. Even if he did do a thing, I'm not weighing it up heavily because I can't. I just can't. But I mean, really, it was a well-earned win by George. Well-earned. He definitely had to earn it in those last laps. He definitely had to earn it. Will this answer the haters? Who knows? Who knows? But George, he definitely had to earn that win. And he, do we secure the 1-2? Or are we racing? Well, you're racing, lad. You're racing. We can't tell Sir Lewis Hamilton, the great Sir Lewis Hamilton, 8-time world champion, that, just stay in second, brother. Like, we can't tell him that. George, you're racing that guy. You're either gonna put the pedal down to the floor or you're not. Alright, this is why I give George credit for this Grand Prix. He's had to race against the boogeyman. 8 times Sir Lewis Hamilton, octa champion. He's had to race against him. You wouldn't have expected a safety car to happen, but that wasn't even supposed to happen. Norris's car was supposed to be moved with ease. Alright, the neutral. What's that neutral button they got on the top of the cars to force the cars into neutral gear so that the marshals can roll it? That didn't work. So they had to put some elbow grease into that shit. But otherwise, a pretty interesting weekend for Mercedes. George Russell, he's had a breakthrough weekend with his first Grand Prix victory, redeeming some past demons from a certain Sakhir Grand Prix where he was not robbed. And, well, there's a Brazilian on the grid. Still can't get over how much every time the cars, never mind when an overtake was happening. Never mind that. Jeepers. But an interesting weekend for Mercedes. They're seemingly back on pace. Right? I will be very interested to see if they actually make budget. I'll be very interested to see that. I can only assume that they're gonna make budget. It's Mercedes. If they don't, and they've just said, give a fuck about this budget cap thing in post of
all of this stuff with Red Bull. Hey, Toto, he might have the inside ear, and if FOM and FIA start going at him hard, he's just gonna drop the real leaks that Red Bull were trying to get redacted. He's just gonna drop the real leaks on this whole budget cap gate scenario. He's gonna drop it. He's gonna say, "Oh no, they weren't over budget by 400k. They were over budget by 5 mil." Right, that's with your tax rebate even taken into consideration. I got the papers right here. How did you get those papers? Oh no, Braun gave them to me. I throw any shit out there, allegedly. But yeah, it's very interesting that Mercedes is now back on pace, looking very strong. Right, we'll see if it's just an outlier Brazilian Grand Prix, or well, if they're good at Abu Dhabi as well, then I suppose they've sold their car. Right, it took a long slew of upgrades, but oh well, they will have solved it. I shouldn't even say a long slew of upgrades, because you probably solved this in 6 or 7 Grand Prix without a budget cap. Like, seriously. But otherwise... Okay, so concerning Red Bull, number one, Brundle, he did not believe Verstappen's front wing replacement time of 10 seconds. I mean, no one believed that. That's very impressive from those Red Bull mechanics. Very fucking impressive. I think they used a hand roll there. I might be mistaken on that. I don't want to call that one way or the other. I think they started using a hand roll in their front wing replacement procedure, but I could just be fibbing. I believe I saw that, but I don't want to on 2 watches, I don't want to say that that's actually what they've done. If that's what they've done, I suppose they're breaking down the film at every fucking F1 HQ to everywhere, right? So they'll know. They'll know. Now, Perez was told to let Verstappen through so that he can challenge Alonso. Alright, now, if I were advising Perez, I would have said that you absolutely do not let that guy through. Absolutely don't do that. Because if you do that, he's not going to let you back past him. Right? He's just not. What was the deal? The deal was that if he can get past Alonso, then whoop-de-doo, he got past Alonso. And if not, well, then he's going to give you back the position, Checo. He'll give the position back to you, Checo. Don't worry, we talked with him on the radio about it. He gave a grunt. We think it was a yes. So now it's come time for Verstappen to be told to let Perez through on the final lap, and he's refused to. It's fascinating to me that this moment has seemingly shattered a whole lot of Verstappen fans' illusions. Like, I mean, Maximilian, he's never ever in his whole career listened to a team order that wasn't in his favor, that wasn't weighted for him. Like, he's never. He was told to let Sainz through in one of the Toro Rosso, this is some Grand Prix for the Toro Rosso days, I couldn't remember which one specifically, but one of them, and he said no. He said no, nigga, fuck that. I'm gonna stay right here. That's what he said. Not verbatim, of course, but that's what he said, basically. Some situation with Ricciardo, he was asked to let Ricciardo through. Fuck that. Right, the likes of Albon and Gasly, they were never even close, so it wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue. But what exactly was the expectation? I remember there was even what's this game? Motorsports Manager? Now there's the real F1 Manager game. Who would have guessed that? But Motorsports Manager, that came out a few years ago, and they had like driver traits in this game, and of course Maximilian is still a favorite of mine. And one of his traits was he ignores team orders. The game had a trait back then when it was released. What was that, 2017 or something? The game had a trait. You couldn't give him team orders. Right? You couldn't do that with Maximilian Verstappen when he was in one of the cars. That option would be grayed out in the game. You don't get to do that. He ain't gonna listen to you. He ain't gonna listen to you. What do you want me to say? Dr. Marco, his MK handlers whispered something to him on the radio, and he's gone and done a madness. You want me to say that? No, he's done the madness all on his own, Verstappen. I don't know what there was to gain for him. Right? But whatever designs he had in his head for this weekend, or whatever designs he so had, right? He might have been a little peeved that tried to sabotage this Lewis Hamilton guy's Grand Prix, and look at him. He's gonna drive past this George Russell guy. I can't believe it. That did all that for nothing. He might have been in that headspace. So when come time for, you got to keep a cool head now and let your teammate by, because he's fighting for second in the championship, like it fucking matters. I don't know. I don't know how to, even Leclerc is pretending this shit matters. Anyway, it matters to someone, I suppose. It always matters to someone. But I mean, there's even this angle for Verstappen of, okay, the car is illegal, quote unquote. I've peddled that. I believe the car is illegal. So it's designed with illegal money. So the car is illegal, right, as far as I'm concerned. So the car is illegal. Ferrari fell away with the championship, or just fumbled the ball at key moments. And the car, this illegal car, is the most winningest car of all time. And now Maximilian Verstappen, the most winningest driver. And in his head, Maximilian, he might really think to himself, okay, what's the last thing this season that could possibly make me look just a bit better than I am? What if Perez, my teammate, finishes third in the Drivers' Championship? I mean, we already got Constructors, right? We already got the Constructors' Championship. Who cares about second in the Drivers' Championship? If you finish third, then, at least I get to say that car might be illegal, but my teammate's third in the championship. Right? It's not like you second and then you'll point to Sir Lewis Hamilton, the Mercedes is, 8-time world champion, by the way, and he'll say, oh look, you've got Bottas finishing second in the championship for his years, and you've got and you've got Rosberg finishing second in the championship for his years, and who knows, next season after, it might be George Russell also finishing second in the championship. And then they'll say, look, when I did it, my teammate, he didn't finish second in the championship, not even once. Not even once. That might be the game Maximilian is playing. Right? There's no other game for him to play. That's the only rationale I can peddle here. Otherwise, the last thing left is that Helmut Marko is figuring out a way to cut ties with this Maximilian Verstappen guy. FOM phoned him up and said, yeah, it's time up on this guy. And now he started mind controlling him to do a madness, allegedly. Right, allegedly. But yeah, you're on with what you want. You're on with what you want on that one. There's no surprises here with Maximilian Verstappen. He's perfectly on script here. Nothing happened, as far as I'm concerned. Very funny to me that his own fan base is quite riled up, or at least a loud segment or sizable segments, one way or the other on that, is quite riled up with him not being a team player and what have you. And then there's this narrative imposed stuff. Oh, Maximilian, he's sour about the Monaco Grand Prix. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Maximilian, he didn't even remember that shit. He didn't even he knows why. Oh, he knows why. That nigga, shut the fuck up, bruh. No one knows why the fuck you did that. You don't even know why you did that at the time. That's just who you are, innit? Or Marco really did a madness, allegedly, over the radio. Who knows? Who knows by now? But it's definitely not Monaco. Like, sit down, behave yourself. Maximilian ain't said nothing. The whole brigade come out running defense. Sit down. It's none of that, I'll tell you that. This is the last bit of image perfection that Maximilian can pull off on this season. Get Checo to finish third in the championship and c'est magnifique. Right, as far as I'm concerned, that's what he's aiming for. The alternative is Marco is now mind controlling him to self-sabotage, which is just as viable as far as I'm concerned. Anything can happen here. Alright, so there's the Norris and Leclerc incident for Ferrari. That really kick-started their Grand Prix in it. And well, do I blame one driver one way or the other? No, not really. I think the cars are just very big. They don't look as big on TV, to be sure, but for me, the cars are just huge, and the drivers came together. It happens. Alright, it happens. The cars will be bigger in the future, so. Then eventually the cars will get so big they actually have to start building F-Zero circuits and shit. Anyway. Anyway, for me, racing incident, that one. Leclerc is very lucky that he's just needed a front wing replacement off the back of that incident. I'm sure something else has been knocked off kilter in the car, like this, who knows, the spring stiffness or something might have been knocked one way or the other off the back of that. Very interesting that he grabbed the halo after the impact. Very interesting. I mean, if you can catch the onboard of that. Anyway, so there was that. That set Leclerc backwards. The commentary team made a comment on the midfield racing functioning like snakes and ladders. That's kind of, to me, that's kind of what the season as a whole has been in regards to the midfield. It's kind of been snakes and ladders over the season. You would call it plug and play. I was talking about plug and play when I started making commentary. But yeah, it was snakes and ladders out there, so it was seemingly very difficult to actually make headway in the midfield. Right, interestingly enough, Sir Lewis Hamilton was making it look very easy at times to get the car back ahead into where it should be. He made it look very easy at times. Well, a lot easier than anyone else was making it, that's for sure. And what else happened for Ferrari? Sainz's race was compromised by a brake duct blockage from a tail strip. Brundle then made a comment in commentary, and he says something should be done about tail strips. You could probably have an aero vacuum. I don't even know what to call it. I'm just calling it an aero vacuum because that's what it would essentially be. It's just like a little tube of air that runs through the car. There's a net at the back of it. The air can escape, but it catches the tail strips. And you could have one on either side of the car, so the driver has, whichever hand is so doing the tear off. Just put it into the side of the cockpit and shoot. back it goes. Who knows where the teams will probably start getting fruity with it and like try and have like some aero tunnel or some shit. I mean, let them do it. Let them do it. I mean, there's gonna be garbage being thrown in there, so yeah. But if you're gonna solve for tariff strips, that's really the only thing you could feasibly do. Because I don't really see like a driver reaching for a pouch or some shit like in the middle of the Grand Prix. Like that's not gonna happen. Of course, they were doing the whole F duct thing, but it's not the same. It's just not the same. And at the back end of this Grand Prix, after a most interesting fight back from Ferrari, I must say. At the back end of this Grand Prix, Leclerc, I'm not particularly sure if he actually cares about second place in the Drivers' Championship or not all that much, right? Likewise for Perez, I should say. I'm not entirely sure if they actually care or if there's just more money on the back end of having second place in the Drivers' Championship. But yeah, Leclerc did ask to be let past Sainz to help his fight for second in the Drivers' Championship at the back of the Grand Prix. And Ferrari correctly denied him, right? Because Sainz, he was on for a podium. The context would be different if they were 4th and 5th. Then that would be different. It would be different also if, I don't know, Sainz was the world champion and and they were given that scenario, that would be different. But yeah, Ferrari correctly denied him. It would have been really unfair to put Sainz in that position, right? Hey, Sainz, just give up that podium and let Leclerc have it. Why? For second in the championships. Doesn't matter. He's ahead of Perez anyway. Right, as things stand. You've been reading me the positions for the last like 10 laps. He's ahead of Perez anyway. So, you know, there would be no reason. I mean, Verstappen, it's very different. He's won the World Championship. Red Bull have won the Constructors' Championship. Right, there's nothing left to play for Verstappen. Right, for Leclerc, he could argue there's something there for him to play for, and Sainz is not playing for as high stakes. Right, you could argue that. But Ferrari were just smackdown correct to deny him. Right, whatever bullshit they might have fed him on radio, because of course we don't get to hear all the radio, but whatever bullshit they might have fed him on radio, they were absolutely right to do that, because you can't put Sainz in that position. You just can't. Because if he refuses, what are the optics? If he accepts, what are the optics? There's no winning there. There's no winning there if you're Sainz. Or perhaps, well, he would win for me if he said, no, I'm taking the podium. I mean, he would win for me doing that. And Ferrari, they probably expected him to do the same. And just said, yeah, we'll just cut the middleman. And we'll tell Charlie ourselves. Alright, but otherwise, pretty good fight back from Ferrari. Pretty good. Bernardo says they've run out of money. I suppose they're taking the budget cap seriously. And I suppose it might be more expensive for them to fabricate parts for their car on account of the exotic packaging, bodywork, etc. But otherwise, I mean, the weekend could have been a lot worse for Ferrari given the hiccups. The hiccups they encountered. But they ended up finishing ahead of Red Bull. So, you know, they can't really complain all that much. They might be a bit spooked that Mercedes are ahead of them, but Bernardo's he's run it to the media that they've run out of money. They might have been out of money 2 Grand Prix ago, for all you know, so Kota was their last roll of the dice with whatever they so did with their car. Which is why it's very interesting to me that Mercedes are still seemingly improving, but I digress. They could just be unlocking understanding in their car, which they probably are, to be fair with them. You know, this battle of the fates at McLaren, it's it's metastasized in such wacky and wonderful ways. So this weekend it was Lando Norris with food poisoning, right? It's just food poisoning weekend versus Daniel Ricciardo's, I don't know, self-orchestrated accident. He really orchestrated that one himself. At first, I wanted to say it was a racing incident. Ricciardo taking out Magnussen, I mean, Haas, they just had an unremarkable Grand Prix, all things considered. Like, that's all I'm really going to say about Haas. Magnussen got the pole. Great that he got the pole. Very lucky timing. Probably some very good praise for Gene Haas. But yeah, it was just an unremarkable Grand Prix from Haas. I suppose there's some decent points from the sprint, so that's always something. But yeah, Ricciardo, I couldn't, just like Brundle when it came to this accident, I could not put any blame on Magnussen for what he did with his car. Ricciardo, I mean, quite frankly, he should have backed off and looked for an opportunity to turn left. Instead, he tried to take his chances going right. It ended poorly. Then at that point, it was self-orchestrated when he made the decision to go right. Then you orchestrate. You know, it was like his own career at that point. It was really like his own career. It was looking a little spicy. You know, about to break through from the middling pack, and well, he made a few bumps this way and that way and took himself out of contention. And regarding the Norris and Leclerc incident, Norris was his wheel alignment was probably off after that accident. Right? If it was his wheel that actually got hit, his wheel alignment was probably off. He was complaining that the car was feeling a difference for the rest of the Grand Prix from then on. But it didn't matter because his car broke down before him. Lando's car broke down before him. He had food poisoning. Ricciardo self-orchestrated his own sabotage. Right, now regarding Lando's car breaking down, I mean, commentary said it itself was an electronics issue. But regarding that, it was a long time to deploy the safety car. I understand they wanted to clear it under virtual safety car, and if the neutral button on the car was working as intended, they would have been able to do that. But then after, it was a very long time to follow restart procedures. With it, you're gonna have to be a lot better than that. Right, and it was, you know, another thing that was bizarre from this whole thing, when the lap cars were told to go past. I'm not sure if Tsunoda was actually told to go past, or I'm actually not sure if Albon was told to go past, but he did. Albon went by, Latifi went by, and Tsunoda did not. He balked somewhere. Either he balked or Dr. Marco did a madness on the radio, allegedly. Tsunoda used an MK acid just as well. Japanese MK acid this time. Right? Allegedly. All of this is alleged. But it was very interesting. One, Tsunoda did not get to unlap himself, and two, he conveniently found himself between Checo, Perez, and Sainz. Sainz still had to overtake Perez. How convenient. You see, at some point it's easier to just like use the fruity MK Ultra shit than to come up with some other shit. Because at least there's like the MK Ultra, I can pull up the court case. Like, this is a real thing. And there's such crazy things that happen. But it's okay, Tsunoda jumped well out of the way. Jumped well out of the way on the restart. But how interesting that he found himself between Perez and Sainz. Oh, what a handy and convenient spot to fall in while trying to unlap yourself. And Dr. Marco, I see your games. No, it's alright. It's alright. It's right. They'll call me the madman. So it's alright, Dr. Marco, don't mind. You're safe. You're still safe. Alright, last thing I'm going to touch on this video. I'm not going to touch on Tracing Martin. I mean, Haas, they've been given a brush. I'm not going to touch it. Has Sebastian Vettel had a stellar Brazilian Grand Prix? You know, has his final Brazilian Grand Prix been stellar? Yes, it has. But I mean, as needs must right now. Right? As needs must. So, Ocon, alright, well, we're on Alpine. Ocon was told to let Alonso through on the restart, around the final safety car restart. And he defied the team order, right? He was definitely going to defy the team order. And he definitely attempted to defy the team order, right? Mind you, the fact that Alonso is right behind Ocon after Ocon basically sabotaged him in the sprint is telling. That's really telling. Right, Alonso, he's getting his own karma as always, right? He's been given the wonderful Esteban Ocon as one of his final teammates in F1. And now next season he's going to have to deal with Lance Stroll, and Lance Stroll is doing the craziest defense jobs on his own teammate through the season. Right, I should probably touch on that. Should probably touch on that in a separate video. But yeah, it's really telling that Alonso is right on Ocon's back at the back end of this Grand Prix after all the madness Ocon put him through starting from the sprint. After all that madness. And Ocon, your bosses are watching. Your bosses are watching you, homeboy. And you know it's gonna be a madness if you now kick up a whole stink with Gasly as well. It's gonna be a peak madness. And then, like, you know, people are gonna wonder why Mark Webber saw fit to get his client the fuck out of Alpine's conveyor belts of talent. Well, for as long as Ocon is there, you really don't want your young driver going there. Gasly, he's now he's a veteran. He's a veteran at this point, right? He's earned his battle scars and all of that. He'll be able to handle an Ocon, and then I suppose Alpine will be hoping that Gasly is going to be definitively faster than Ocon over the course of 2 or 3 seasons, so that they can just get rid of Ocon. And then they can put the Jack Do on it or something, who knows. Right, but Ocon, after this whole show of just let me race against Vettel, I'm not going to listen to your team order. After that whole show, there was a bit of a kerfuffle heading into turn 1. Vettel went wide. I'm not sure if Bottas locked up. Ocon might have locked up. And it was all a bit the harem scarum. Everyone got through, Vettel ran wide, and we cut away because there was more interesting shit happening on the circuit, and somehow, some way, Ocon fell behind Alonso after all of that. Somehow, some way. I don't think he had any plans on dropping behind Alonso. I think he just made a mistake. I could go get the film, but it really doesn't change anything one way or the other, because he's already defied the order to start with, and given the team, well, given the pit wall the fucking headache to deal with. So now they have to do some whole therapy session on fucking radio. Ocon, you're still our guy, just let Alonso through, we're trying to chase points, man. Like, they have to run a whole therapy session on the brother. And you know the wild thing with Ocon, everyone is watching. Everyone is watching, brother. Even FOM are watching. Well, yeah, even FOM are watching as they're curating the audio. They're like, oh man, Ocon's at it again. Damn, let's run that shit. Just free clicks. Everyone's watching, brother. And believe you me, this is no advert to other teams. Maybe a desperate team would take you next, right? If Haas are desperate to have a fast driver or something, maybe they'll take you, right? But all the actual top teams, nah, none of them will take me. You best hope that Renault actually throw the Renault badge and the Renault name on that team and they stop running it as Alpine, because that's your last hope. That's your last hope. That project's not to be taken seriously while it's called Alpine. At me on that. Oh, that's their sports car brand. It's like AMG. Nigga, at me on that. Fucking at me on that, dog. Oh, Mercedes are running AMG. Yeah, Mercedes still have the name Mercedes. They have to take it seriously. It's Mercedes AMG. It's not just Alpine now, right? It's not Renault Alpine. It would be a different thing if Mercedes had the option of just brand it as AMG and run it like that. Would be a different thing. Honda, if they weren't taking it seriously, they would just brand the thing as Mugen. Oh, that's their tuner company. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, that's not the main manufacturer. Right, even Fiat, when they want to put another team into F1, they go down their catalog of brands. They're not gonna put Fiat into F1. Could you imagine? Oh my day. They're not gonna put Fiat into F1. They're not gonna put VW into F1. You can't skimp on those projects, right? It's like Ferrari. You can't skimp on that project. It's like Audi when they come in. They're not gonna be able to skimp on that project. The name matters. For as long as this Alpine thing, for as long as this Renault situation is dubbed Alpine, right? This is not a serious outfit. So Ocon, you're not gonna fish out a potential championship. Not even good enough to fish out a championship, as far as I'm concerned. But you're not going to fish out the championship at Alpine. It's not going to happen. And if they do take the thing seriously and they start branding as Renault, well, you're probably not. You're not on their plans. You're not on their long-term plans in that case, anyway. That's just the way the cookie crumble. So now you're out here doing a madness, and I talked about this madness for the sprints, right? Now you're doing a madness defying team orders in the real Grand Prix. All these teams are watching, none of them are gonna give you a contract. Gunther, if he's desperate, I mean, you best get buddy with Gunther, I tell you what. I tell you what. Because if it's World War III at Alpine next season, interesting that World War III has probably already started, we just don't know it yet, but this ain't the vid for that. But it's gonna be World War III at Alpine. If Ocon is gonna be doing this type of madness with Gasly, it's gonna be World War III. These two Frenchmen getting all heated in the cockpit and throwing French slurs at each other, that's some madness. That's some madness. Otmar, you're giving yourself a job, I tell you what. You're gonna have to budget some psychologist's help for the season, I tell you what. Because you're gonna need it. You're gonna be losing your mind dealing with these drivers. The way Ocon is presenting himself at the back end of the season, oh boy, Otmar, Mr. Safna, you're gonna lose your mind dealing with these guys. Anyway, that's the vid. Brazilian GP sprint observations. Gorgeous Russell. Just won a Grand Prix. There's a Brazilian on the grid and friendly fire. I could even name this breakthrough weekend. I might do that. Anyway, that's the vid. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Hell breezy. Let me show you how to keep the dice rolling when you're doing that thing over there, homie. Hey, let's go! Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day. See, they really wanna pop me. Just know that you will never flop me. And cocky. You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come, a nigga gotta set it, then I gotta go, and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow, and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing a nigga think that he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Then I'm gonna murder everything and anything about it. Boom, about a bing. I gotta do a lot of things to make it clearer to a couple niggas that I always win, and then I gotta get it again and again and again. And I be doing it to death, and now I move a little foul. Nigga better call a rap, and everybody know my style. Niggas know that I'm the best when it comes to doing this, and I be banging on my chest, and I bang in the east, and I banging in the west, and I come to give you more, and I will never give you less. You will hear it in the street, and you can read it in the press. Do you really wanna know what's next? Let's go. See the way we on it, and we all up in the race, and you know we gotta go now, try to keep up with the pace, and we struggling and hustling and sell it, and I get it, and we always gotta do it, take it to another place, gotta taste it, and I gotta grab it, and I gotta cut all through this traffic.